All right, so let's talk about JavaScript. First review of the year. So starting from the lower beginner level. So what I would like to do is, first of all, I will try to solve some of the questions, like if I was playing the challenge, and then I would like to compare in some occasions my code against your code. On lower beginner tier, it doesn't really make sense because it's a quiz game. So eventually everybody has the same answer, right? But starting from the placeholder level and especially the upper level, I would really like to focus on what you did. All right, so let's play it. Let me go back to mobile mode. Let's see if it works, more or less. All right, so question number 1. Find the positive number. So we have a function. Can anybody tell me how many arguments our function receives? 1, that's correct. As we will explain tomorrow, you see that character that probably you've never used in your life before. That's a square bracket or square brace. That's the way you represent lists in JavaScript. List of elements, list of numbers, 1, 2, 3. List of characters, Donald, Kim, Boris, comma separated list of elements. In this particular scenario, we have a comma separated list of numbers. And we have to find the positive one. So we are assuming that each list has up to 1 positive number. So for instance, here, what's the positive number? 4. Here we go. Here, we got more than 1, but if we got more than 1, we are expected to return the first one, the first coincidence, the first match. The rest, we don't care, we ignore them. And finally, if there are no positive numbers, we just return undefined. Undefined is a keyword in JavaScript. Undefined means nothing. What are you doing tonight? Undefined, right? What are you doing tonight? Nothing. All right, cool. And now, that UX, that doesn't look really good to me. Let me zoom it out a bit. Here you go, much better, right? So, look at the syntax. This is important. It's important because of 2 reasons. First of all, because it's not obvious if it's the first time you come across that. But then, because the majority of the methods in JavaScript have the same signature. They have the same look and feel. So even if it takes you a while to understand how this works, once you understood one, all the others are for free. So let's have a look. The way this works is, A, find the positive number. We got a list of numbers. Look at the syntax. Numbers dot find. Find is a method in JavaScript to find an element in the list. What is the dog? If you have a list of animals, cat, dog, duck, and pork, what is the dog? Dog. Here you go. You get it. So how this works? Look at the syntax. Numbers dot find. That empty line, by the way, that break line is optional. You can put everything in one line, so don't worry about that. That's the important bit. For each number, so we're going to go, we'll go 1, the first, then the second, then the third. So we'll inspect every individual number on that list of numbers. So for each number, look at the syntax. That equal greater, that represents a function in JavaScript. That's what we call an arrow function. Even if it's weird, once again, you are going to see that every single day of your life. So you'll get used to that. And then on the right-hand side, here's where we specify the condition. What's the condition? The condition is the number has to be positive. So if the number is positive, return it. If the number is not positive, check the next number. So from the beginning, we keep iterating the first, the second, the third, the fourth, blah, 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 blah. So looking on the right-hand side, can anybody tell me which condition tells me if the number is positive or not? A. Yeah? Easy, right? Number greater than 0. So if the number is greater than 0, then return it. I got a question for you. On the first exercise, on the first assertion, to be more precise, technically speaking, so we got 3 numbers, right? -2, 4, and -3. Can anybody tell me how many times this condition will be evaluated? Twice. Why twice, Florian?
Because the first one is negative, so it's going to skip it as not valid, and the second one is going to meet the condition and it's going to stop.
Yeah, that's correct. So one of the particularities of the find method is as soon as the condition is satisfied once, stop. It doesn't really care about what happened next. That's why here it returns 3 and not 2, because 3 satisfies the condition of being a positive number. So the rest will be ignored. All right, so should we mark option A? Yeah, let's try. And then we got confetti time. So that was right. Fantastic. Any questions? No? Find is one of the top 5 methods more important in JavaScript. So this is really important to play with it. There is a find training topic on the platform. So there are 5 questions about find. So I will strongly recommend you to practice with it a lot. All right, so question number 2. Get the capital letters. It's sort of related, but in this particular case, we care not only about the first matching condition. We really want to go from the very beginning to the very end of the list, and we want to capture all the coincidences. Yeah, that's the main difference. That's the main difference. And how do we do that? Oh, that looks weird. Hello? Oh, you cannot see the left of the code. Let me refresh the page. Here you go. Looks better now. So how do we do that? Look, filter. 2 of the most important methods in JavaScript, find and filter. What's the difference? We'll do a workshop about that with many examples. Find stops once the first condition is satisfied. Filter will go until the end of the list. Yeah? And it will retrieve all the elements that satisfy the condition. So look, if we want to fetch all the capital letters, not only the first one, look, is lower a capital letter? No, ignore it. Next one. Is big B a capital letter? Add it to the basket. Yeah? Is capital E a capital E? The question is stupid. Thank you for nothing. Is big E a capital letter? Yes. Add it to the basket. Yeah? You know when you go to Tesco and you start filling the basket with things that you don't need, like chocolate and stuff like that? So this is what the filter is doing. It's adding, it's filling the basket. Yeah? So B, E, and small set is not a capital one, so it will ignore it. Yeah? So it will go from the beginning to the end. In other words, on the first assertion, how many times, regardless of what the solution is, we'll say that in a minute, ignoring the different options, how many times that loop will run on the first scenario? 4, that's correct. Yeah? We need to go until the end, because you never know if there will be a capital letter on the right-hand side until you've covered the whole list of elements. Does it make sense? That's the most important thing, find versus filter. So now, what's the right answer and why? That's a bit more complicated. I'll give you a hint. A cannot be the right answer. Why? Because remember here, we need to specify a condition. Number is greater than 0. The first letter is the. whatever the length of the list is. So we need a condition. What's the condition here? There is no condition. Condition means comparing things. Yeah? On the other three, at least we have conditions. So it is not A, for sure. And now, if you remember the syntax using find, remember, we got the argument, which is each individual element on the list, letter, whichever the letter is, and then with the arrow symbol, the condition. So the condition is the letter. How do we know if a letter is written in capital or not? Well, if the letter is the same as the letter transformed to capital, that means it's capital. Does it make sense? A small e compared to big E, are they the same? No. Big E compared to big E, are they the same? Yes, right? So that's the idea. The idea is, in all these three options, ignoring the details, ignoring the semicolons, parentheses. The idea is, let's compare. If the letter is the same as the letter transformed to uppercase. That's the idea. But now, why is this so confusing? Well, first of all, look, let's compare. If you pay attention and you compare B and D, they are pretty much the same. What's the difference between B and D? Semicolon, that's right, that's right, that's right. There is something pretty advanced here. As I told you this morning, you've been a bit unlucky, if you accept the expression, because some of the questions are a bit tough. This is a good example. Yeah? This is about paying attention to many details that you don't know yet. But anyway, because we already came across, let's talk about them, right? So, whenever we have this structure, we cannot add a semicolon. Whenever you got this parenthesis, you see that's a parenthesis, right? Parenthesis and close parenthesis. Whenever you got that, semicolons are illegal. You cannot add a semicolon. That means be out. Cannot be that option. Yeah? So now it's between C and D. What's the difference between C and D? Return statement. Now the question is, do we have to add a return statement here? Correct. That's a bit complicated. I was not expecting you to understand that. You can actually now stop looking at the screen if you feel this is a bit overwhelming. So whenever you got parentheses, like this one, whatever comes next is returned automatically. You cannot add a return statement because that's redundant. If you added parentheses, whatever is written next, hello, will be returned. So it doesn't make sense to add a return statement. Okay? So once again, that question is a bit overcomplicated. But anyway, based on that, let's recap. Option A, that's not true because there is no condition. What's the condition? No condition. Out. Option B, that's not true. Does anyone remember why option B cannot be valid? Semicolon, illegal. Yeah? Syntax of JavaScript. Option C is not valid because of the return statement. You cannot add the return statement when you have this strategy of the parentheses. So the right option has to be option D. Here you go. Yeah?
Question, just
Go for it.
on the last one. Because the argument is plural.
Yep.
And inside, use singular.
That's a fantastic question. That's a fantastic question. That's my favorite way of naming my arguments. Look, why this is called letters in plural? Because we have a list of letters. Yeah? I hope you agree on that. But now, what Alex is reporting here is, all right, letters.filter letter. Why this is in singular? Because that line will run for each letter. So you are evaluating each time an individual letter. On the first iteration, letter will be lower a. On the next iteration, letter will be capital B. On the third iteration, letter will be capital E. And on the last iteration, letter will be a small z.
I guess, sorry, my the
Yep.
name of the argument.
Yep.
Just name. It can be anything.
Yeah. That's
How does, like, if you named it fish, and then what would you put inside of the filter?
That's a good question. Technically speaking, you can put whatever you want here. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Right.
Tomorrow we're going to talk about JavaScript structures, functions, variables. We'll do a quick introduction to how JavaScript works tomorrow. As part of that process, we'll talk about naming conventions. Naming conventions has been, historically speaking, one of the first reasons, if not the first reason, for me to reject a candidate. If instead of letters, you call that Brexit, or fish, or X, or Manchester, technically speaking, it will work, right? If I replace letters with Manchester here and there, it will work. If I replace letter with Jeremy Corbyn here and there, it will work. But I hope you agree with me, if you do that, you are losing all the semantics. Your code will be much more complicated to understand. Yeah? But you are right, you can replace letters here and there, and you can replace letter in singular here. Oh, sorry, let me go back. Here, here, and there. Every single instance. Yeah? I'll show you some tricks on Visual Studio Code about how to replace variable names and things like that. Yep.
Why do we use the three comparison operator? Why don't will it double one not?
That's a good question. Fantastic question. Why 3 equals? If you've been working with other programming languages like Python and others, they don't have that. They have double equals. Yeah? It goes beyond the scope of the session to explain the differences. But to keep the long story short, triple equals is stricter, is safer. Yeah? Never use double equals. Never use. Another reason not to hire a developer receiving a code with double equals, because that person is missing the most fundamental aspect of coding. I'm not even asking him or her to understand why, but that's something you should know. Never use double equals. Actually, in 2012, I attended a conference of, Douglas Crackford? Have you heard about him? So Mr. Crackford is considered the father of JavaScript. Let me show you a picture. He's an American guy with weird t-shirts. He's a very old man. Yeah. So this guy, this old man, is very famous for having written the most popular JavaScript book in history, which is called JavaScript: The Good Parts. You may have heard about it. Yeah. JavaScript: The Good Parts. Don't read it. Don't read it. Don't read it. Don't read it because it's a very old book. It doesn't make sense today. This is not like the Bible that remains valid in 2,000 years. If you create a book in JavaScript today, it will be invalid in 10 years. So, but at that time, 10 years ago, it was a fantastic book.
What's that the good part?
The good part, yeah. So there is a joke on the internet. So if you search JavaScript versus the good parts, that's a joke. So here, these are the good parts, and these are the total JavaScript, right? So it's a joke to say, hey, the good parts is a very tiny aspect of the language. Once again, that's not true. JavaScript has changed a lot since then. But anyway, it's just a joke, right? So, according to Douglas Crackford, let me try to find the quote. Douglas Crackford, double equals versus. He had a very famous quote. Let's see if we can find it. I'm sure he's talked about that many times. So double equals evil. You see, I cannot find it now. But anyway, according to him, double equals are evil. And the message is very bold. Like, I don't care if you don't understand why. Don't use it. Simple, don't use it. Cool. We'll talk about that in the future. Why triple and not double? Anyway, any other questions? That's a fantastic question. Parentheses are optional. In other words, technically speaking, I could move all this code here, yeah, and keep it in one line. But be careful, guys. One of the classic problems, especially with junior developers, especially when they send a test to a company and we review the test, and we find this thing often. Try to avoid long lines. The code should be the shorter the better. Because if your code is very long, so can I show you? No, I cannot show you at the moment. But anyway, if the code is very long, you are forcing the reader to perform horizontal scrolling. That goes against readability. So the code should be compact, should be clean, easy to read. Yeah? Anything else?
Greater and equals to sign. I'm just like wondering if that can be replaced with 3 equal signs. Because letter, greater, equals to is just confusing. It's only maths, isn't it?
I'm not sure if I got the question.
Letter,
Later, yeah?
greater than, no, equals to or greater than. So it's below or
Arrow function.
Arrow.
She's referring to.
Yeah, no. So, right, so you mean, yeah, that bit. Let me try to zoom it.
So it won't work if you have to be.
No. So, yeah, that's a good point, Fish. Let me show you. So, that symbol has nothing to do with greater, lower, nothing to do with maths. It's just a special symbol introduced by JavaScript in 2015, 4.5 years ago. Yeah? And that's the way with JavaScript you can deal with conditions. So it's just a special syntax that I'm sure you are hating at the moment, but you need to get used to it. Yeah? And the syntax is always the same. The syntax is, you got the argument, and then once you got the argument, what's the condition to keep that letter or not? That's the way you specify it. Yeah? So, okay, I receive a letter, A, B, C, D, whatever. Should I keep it or not? Well, I will keep it if that condition is satisfied. Yeah? Once again, is the syntax natural? Probably not. Is the syntax important? Yes. Because every single method in JavaScript about lists and arrays uses the same signature. So it's important to get used to it. Anything else? No? Cool, let's do one more. Oh, it's a good question. How good a student am I? Cool. So, can you see the screen? Oh, it's very sunny outside.
Yeah, it's gonna go in a second.
Let me zoom it a bit more. So, how good a student am I? So, what we got here is how many arguments our how good a student am I function receives? 2. Can you tell me what type of argument is it? Number? 2 numbers. Yeah, easy. 2 numbers. So depending, imagine that you're going back to school and then you are doing some tests, some exams, and this is the score, if that makes any sense, that you get out of 100. The higher the score, the better. Yeah? So according to this educational system algorithm, so if both, you did 2 exams, right? If in both of them your score is below 50 points, so the outcome, the message is you have to improve, right? Because you are not doing really well. However, if the first one is horrible, but hey, at least the second one got above 50, the message is getting better. Yeah? Only the other way around. If the first one was good, but the second one wasn't, you are getting worse, right? And finally, if both results are above 50, then it's just great. Yeah? So that's the algorithm. And now, what else? Look, by the first time, here, we're dealing with conditionals. If else. Yeah? If I drink a lot, I get drunk. If I stay the whole weekend at home, then I save money. Yeah, you see that idea? If else. So that's pretty much it. Let's ignore the first one because that's the exercise, but let's focus on the next one. Look, if the first score is above 50, and, guys, this is the and symbol, and. If the first score is above 50 and the second one is below 50, we're getting worse, right? Then getting worse. So now, in this one, if the score, sorry guys, if the first one is below 50, but the second one is above 50, we're getting better, right? How you agree with me? So now, need to improve the first case scenario. What do we have here? Need to improve if what? If the first score is what? A, B, C, or D? A. Anyone disagree on that? First score lower than 50? Can you see the screen, Kenny? Yeah, cool. First score lower than 50. And what about the second one? A, B, C, or D? A as well, right? If both scores are below 50, then need to improve. The main goal of this exercise is, first of all, get familiar with the math symbols, greater, smaller, equal, all these things, and also to start getting familiar with conditional statements. If something, return something. Else, if something, yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions? No? All right, so let's evaluate it. Cool, it works. All right, so let's leave lower beginner here. And let's have a look to the beginner track. Where is it? Here you go, beginner. On the beginner, as you know, we need to do a bit of coding, but that should be fine. And in here, by the first time, I would like to compare maybe my code with your code. It's a really good way to find spot potential problems. All right, so what we got today here? That's a good question. Is she a world champion? So we have a function, is world champion woman. How many arguments our is world champion woman receives? One, that's correct. You see that curly brace? That represents what we call in JavaScript an object. Tomorrow we'll go through these things on the JavaScript workshop. Yeah? But that's an object. An object is just a dictionary, a collection, a database of key value pairs. A classical example is when dealing with users. First name, Peter. Last name, Johnson. Age, 21. Collection of properties. Yeah? In this particular case, we want to check if a given user or a given person or a given whatever is, first of all, a woman and then also a world champion. Both conditions have to be satisfied. If it's a woman but is not a world champion, our function will return false. If it's a world champion but is not a woman, our function will return false. It will only return true if both conditions are met. You see, is world champion true? Is woman true? Return true. All right, so let's scroll. I clicked somewhere. Sorry guys, I need to get used to this new user interface. So where is the other one? Just give me a second. Yeah, here you go. Yep. So on the second case, as you can see here, is world champion woman? Is a woman, yes, but is not a world champion, return false. And on the last case, Fernando Alonso is a world champion, yes, it's a woman, apparently not. So that should return false as well. Yeah, that's pretty much the idea. Both conditions have to be met, satisfied. All right, so look, in this particular case, the code has been partially written. Let me move my face out of the window so then you can get a clear vision on the screen. Here you go. You see? Here's our algorithm. Is world champion woman? Return and then we have two conditions. First of all, is woman. Yeah, the function is there, so we don't have to care about how do we evaluate if the given athlete is a woman or not. This is there already. And likewise, is world champion. We already have a function that checks if a given person is a world champion or not. We don't care about that. The important thing is here. How do we specify the condition? What condition is missing here?
Is world champion.
That's correct, is world champion. So, is world champion. What else? Say it again? Parentheses, correct. So that's the way we execute the function. So call the function is world champion, passing athlete. And then what's the condition? How many of these conditions do we need to satisfy? One, the other, or both? Both, correct. Yeah? Both conditions have to be satisfied. So what was the logic behind, the human logic? Is world champion and is woman, or is world champion or is woman? And, you agree on that? And, both conditions. How do you set the and operator in JavaScript? Second? Two ampersands, correct. Double ampersand. That's the JavaScript syntax. Yeah? I know in Python you can do that. That's not valid in JavaScript. Yeah? Anyway, doesn't really matter. Double and. What do you think, guys? Will this work? Any typo? Any error? No? Should we try it? Should we test it? Confetti or not confetti? Yes, confetti time. Yeah?
Why are we ignoring name? Name that fits because is world champion is woman. Why is the name part of the conditions?
The name.
So if you go back to your
Yeah.
screen.
Yep.
Name.
Okay. That's a good question. Why do we care about the name? We don't care about the name. So it's useless. It's useless. You could talk here about how old a given athlete is. It's useless. Imagine that you have a user's database. As part of your user database, you may have a lot of properties. Name, address, phone number. But to determine whether one of your users is a world champion or not, you don't care about the name. You are writing a function just to check if the given athlete satisfies these two conditions. You can pass 20,000 conditions, 20,000 properties, but we will ignore them. Yeah? That's the way the algorithm works.
With the function set on the other side,
Yep.
is it good practice to put because you've got like the functions that go within and below,
Yep.
would you not define them first? Or,
So this one to be last one, the upper function that we have there.
That's a good question. So you're thinking about moving these two functions about?
yeah.
That's a good question. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because they're gonna be executed in the order that they need to get the values more or less from the functions below, even if you're putting on top or below, I guess.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter. So JavaScript is smart enough to understand that. You're right. In this line, is world champion. What is the world champion? Is declared later on. So will JavaScript be able to understand that? Yes. Technically speaking, you don't have to understand that. This is called hoisting. You can not hosting like one-on-one or GoDaddy. Hoisting. So hoisting is a technique used by JavaScript to make sure that even if a function is declared at the end of your file, JavaScript will be able to find it. Yeah? All right, anything else? No? So question number 2, I believe. Oh, get the,
One question.
yeah?
So is it good to define the functions at the top or at the bottom?
It doesn't really matter. The order is not relevant. Yeah?
But is there any good approach or something like that to do?
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about, I think this Friday, maybe, I don't know, we have a workshop about best practices. Not about fixing broken code. Okay, the code works. How can we improve it a bit? Yeah, we'll talk about that on Friday. All right, so get the average. So get average function. We have how many arguments? Once again.
One.
One. What's the type of the argument?
Array.
An array. That's correct. Yeah. We have an array of numbers and we want to get the average. Easy, right? The average of 2, 3, and 4 is 3. Correct. So what we got on the right hand side? Once again, look, the code is 90% written. You see? So the function responsible of calculating the average is there. We don't really care. We don't care about that. It works. That's fine. The only problem here is we have to invoke that function. We have to call it. One function, get average, calling another function, get rounded average. So how do we do that? How do we invoke a function in JavaScript? Say it again?
Write the name of it.
By the name, yeah, get rounded average.
And then parentheses and then the argument.
That's correct, and parentheses values. Easy. You see, we have a function, once again, sorry, function get average that invokes another function. We see that tomorrow. One function can call another function that can call another function, functions everywhere. JavaScript is a functional programming language. You got functions everywhere. What is a function, you may be thinking? We'll see that tomorrow. Yeah? A function is just a piece of code that solves one problem. For instance, get rounded average. Yeah, a function to calculate the average out of a list of numbers. Any questions?
The get average function now inside the average function.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So the way the Codery platform works is the system will automatically call that function, get average. How many times? 3. Get average. Every time the Codery platform calls get average, it's up to us to decide what to do. What do we want to do? Whenever we call get average, we want to bind to call this function written at the bottom. Yeah? Anything else? No? All right, so let's do the last one on the beginner tier. So what we got here? Hello, Kobe Bryant. So how many arguments do we receive here? 2. What's the type of the arguments? For instance, Camila? 2 strings. That's correct. String and a string. So then we have to combine them somehow. Yeah, saying hello, comma, space, first name and last name. Nothing particularly complicated, I hope. All right. So we need to declare the 2 arguments. For instance, first name. Is that right? No, why not? Camel case. I don't know what camel case means yet. So what?
Needs to start with.
Correct. Remember what we said this morning. JavaScript is case sensitive. So make sure you match the capital, the big and the small letters, yeah? First name. And also last name. Would it work, guys, if I change the order? Can anybody tell me what will this return? Hello, Brian Kobe. You see? This is wrong. We want to return something like that. First name and last name, yeah?
Why would it do that if you, because inside it you put hello first name.
Yeah?
So why does it, even though you've got arguments in a different order, why does it pull the wrong thing?
Well, because if I pass last name, yeah, let's ignore the second one.
Oh no, sorry, no, ignore my question.
No, but that makes sense, right? If I pass last name, JavaScript will assign last name to Kobe. Yeah? That's why it won't work. Yep. Do you know why his name is Kobe, by the way? Have you been to Japan? Have you been to Japan? No? Kobe beef. Yeah. His mom, yeah, it's true, it's real history. It's real history. His mom liked a lot of the Kobe beef from Kobe. It's really tasty. Yeah. I recommend you to go there. But please save some money first because it's not cheap. Anyway. All right, so these are the 3 questions about beginner. So let me quickly, actually I didn't check your code. So let me have a look to your code. All right, so let me change the style of visualization. So just give me a second, please. I will try to zoom it as much as possible. Here you go. Yeah, so I mean, I believe everybody did pretty much the same. Let's focus on the detail. Let's pay attention to detail because detail makes the difference. Yep. So, fish. Can anyone spot any tiny elegance issue on fish solution?
Space.
See, space. It's tiny, yeah? Still, it works, all good. Let's try to focus on these details. So, Anita, all good. Andrea, all good. Florine, all good. All good for Rochelle. Chuck, yeah, and Alex. I mean, you, Octavian, same, missing space, yeah? And all good for Camila. And our guest from Romania but living in London or Manchester, who knows, all good for him or is it a guy or a girl? It's a guy. Okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, this is beginner, right? Everyone more or less writes the same answers. You will see through the next weeks, the more complicated the challenge get, that there will be many different ways to attack the problems. And at that time, this exercise will be very useful. Because even if you manage to solve a problem, let me show you something actually. Let me do something a bit off topic. Let me show you the first challenge in history, the only challenge that ran in 2017. So when I created Codery by the first time, I invited 2 of my best friends that are 2 senior developers, JavaScript developers, working here in London. I don't even know how to find that, to be honest. No, but I can find the time after, but this was the first one. Yeah, definitely. Find method, right? Sorry, I was on the upcoming. Sorry, that was in the past, right? Sorry, that was my fault. So, if you give me a second, I would like to show you something. At some point, you will be able to solve problems, like, okay, solve the problem, whatever. But at some point, by comparing your strategy against others, you will be able to improve your technique. Because you will say, hey, wait a minute, I solved it, fine. But I needed like 25 minutes. I had to write 20 lines of code. Why this guy needed 5 minutes? He only wrote 3 lines of code. Yeah. So I think it's a very useful way to get better by understanding what your colleagues did. That's it. Let's see if I can click on it. This is expert, so I'm not asking you to understand the code, but I would like you to compare the size, yeah, of each code, of each snippet, if it works. Yeah, I think the platform had better days. I mean, if it doesn't work now, I'll have a look later on and I'll share it with you. Oh, is the platform? No, it's working, but it's just a bit slow. Anyway, I'm not going to ruin your time now. I'll find it, I promise. I find it later on. All right. So, that was question number 1. What about question number 2? Get the average. I mean, everybody did the same here. It's impossible to do something different, right? It's literally impossible. It was just 1 line. And what about the third question? String literals. The same. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I'm wondering, Kanye, all these spaces here. Oh, it's a tab. Yeah. So, yeah, that tab is not really necessary, right? That's why it looks a bit strange. But yeah, I think I know what happened. Yeah, I'll tell you what Kaney tried to do, and that's actually not your fault. So you know when you are filling a form to sign up on a platform like Netflix, first name, sometimes you press tab and it goes automatically to the next input. That's probably what Kaney tried to do, right? She pressed tab, but it actually added a tab. That's not your fault. We need to change that on the platform. Cool. Yeah, so I mean, some of you had the same issue. Cool, but apart from that, you know, it's all good, right? So let's finish this session by talking about the upper beginner. Once again, I would like to do probably 3 questions, and then we will call it a day. So what we got today here? Question number 1. Get the positive numbers. So before paying attention to detail, which method do we need here? Find or filter? Why find? Why filter? Correct. If the question were, give me the first positive number, the first one, with find, easy. But in this particular case, we want them all. So we need to use filter. All right, no problem at all. So let's write the algorithm. As we will explain tomorrow, in JavaScript, when you have a function, generally speaking, unless you have a very good reason against that, you should add a return statement. A function is input-output, yeah? It's like a black box. You send something, and you get something back. Send something, get something out. What do we send? A list of numbers, 1, 2, 3. What do we get back? A subset, only containing the positive ones. So, numbers. What else?
Arrow.
Second?
Numbers
Dot?
filter.
Filter. You agree on that? And now, remember the weird syntax. In here, the argument. So, how should we call it? Option A, number. Option B, numbers. Option C, Jeremy Corbyn. Number in singular. Very important. Yeah? Why? Because we want to check each individual number. And then remember the syntax. Then, you remember that? Nothing to do with maths. Then the condition. What's the condition? Number greater than 0. Like that? Would this work? Are you sure?
Go back. I think it says 0 is a positive number.
Oh.
That's why I messed up.
Look, please consider 0 as a positive number. That's controversial. Is 0 a positive or a negative number?
Neither.
Technically, it's a positive number.
Who cares, right? The thing is, according to the instructions, we should consider 0 as a positive number. So, do we have to change anything?
Greater than equal to.
Greater or equal.
Semicolon.
So, first of all, will this work? Yes or no? No? So, all right, so you, Anita and Alex, you are arguing that without the semicolon,
It would work without a but.
are the semicolons mandatory or are they optional? You think are mandatory, Ian? Yeah? Let's have a look. I mean, the thing is, if they are mandatory, so we've got a lobby of semicolon defenders based on what Anita, Yiyun, and Alex said. They say that we need it. That means that if I don't do it, if I don't drop it, it won't work, right? That's what happened. Ooh. It works. It works. In other words, semicolons are optional. In the past, 10 years ago, they were mandatory. So if you find a time travel machine and you attend the bootcamp in 2006, your answer will be valid. I'm sure you can find a time travel machine, you have better things to do than going to a bootcamp in 2000. That's a different story, right? In the past, they were mandatory, not today anymore. However, should we drop them? What do you think? That's controversial. That's controversial. And once again, now I would like to talk about that the appetite of the developer. Some developers think if they are not necessary, what's the point? Other developers, including myself, we still like them. This is what we call syntax sugar. Semicolons, to me, make the code easier to read and to understand. Probably not here. I mean, that's pretty simple, yeah? I know the code and blah, 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 happy time. But if we were facing a more complex exercise, having a semicolon will help me to understand that I'm done. Yeah? Semicolon means that's it. I mean, if you're writing a letter to your family in South Korea, right? And you said, hello, mom. How are you? I'm fine, thanks. See you. Happy coding. I mean, technically speaking, mom will understand. Well, probably not. She will be thinking, what are you drinking or what sort of drugs now? Anyway, so the message is there. However, I hope you agree with me, adding some commas, exclamation marks, things like that. These symbols help facilitate the process of reading a piece of text, of human text. Yeah? Same thing happens with coding. All right, so semicolon, and of course, if we test it again, it still works. Yeah? Nothing has changed. Yeah.
So is that kind of rule that you use plural and then singular numbers and number for the functions?
Yeah. Yeah. So you mean about the semantics? Why you call it number of numbers?
Yeah, is that kind of rule?
No. Listen.
You just do it all.
Listen. Let me show you a very nice trick in Visual Studio Code that you can use here. Imagine I want to rename numbers. I can change it here and I can change it there, and that's fine. But in VS Code, you can use a trick. If you're a Mac user, if you select the variable and you press Command D, pop. On Windows, I think is Windows D or Option D or one of something D. Now look, it's pretty cool, right? You can rename the variable. So for instance, if I call it Brexit, will it work? It will work. It's arguably the only scenario where Brexit will work as expected. There you go. It doesn't really matter. Whatever your function receives will be assigned to the Brexit variable.
Yeah, I get that, but I mean,
The other one.
I know the concept, but you use the plural and then singular because it's easier to.
No, yeah, that's the same thing. That's the same thing. So technically speaking, look, can I do that? Can I change number and now numbers? Will that work? This is mind-blowing to me. But
Because it doesn't make sense.
it doesn't really matter. Yeah? That's very weird because here you get a list of numbers and here you get an individual number. That's horrible. That's horrible. But technically speaking, it's correct. Yeah? So once again, the name of the variable doesn't matter technically speaking, but it matters a lot from a human point of view. So if you get a list of numbers, call it numbers in plural. And then whenever you use find or filter, whenever you want to inspect each individual number, just bring a meaningful name here. I mean, you can call it value you prefer, or I don't know, integer, I don't know. But something that proves that this is a single number.
So it's like common rule.
Yeah. It's a common rule. It's a common rule, definitely. Anything else? No. So let me check what you did. I'm expecting some differences here, right? Because by the first time you had to do proper coding. All right, so let me refresh, see if it works now. Here you go. All right, so for Caney or Caney? Caney. So for Caney, can you spot any subtle elegance warning here? Semicolon. Yeah, that's the first thing. Bracket space. You mean this one, the parentheses? The parentheses. Yeah, that's correct. So that parentheses are necessary. Anything else? That's correct. Camila is right. That empty line. I mean, I'll tell you something. If my main concern is spaces, semicolons, blah, 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 that means the code is good. If there was something more important to focus, I will ignore the rest, right? But yeah, these tiny details make the difference. So let's try to fix them. So for Andrea, yeah, I think it's perfect. Nothing to complain about. For Anita, anybody found anything?
Yeah, I find
Space. Yeah, correct. Camila, that's interesting. That's interesting. Very interesting. So first of all, the obvious one. When we have the greater, smaller, blah, 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 we should have a space on the left, good, but also on the right. Yeah? Also. Look, that's controversial because of two reasons. Let me try to imitate what Camila did. She did that. Technically speaking, it works. It's okay. However, back to the standards or the de facto standards. If you want to break the code into a new line, please break it before the dot. Rule number 1. Yeah? The dot goes alongside. Rule number 2. Because that filter belongs to that instruction, it's the same thing. Correct, you're right. Please, not like that. Indent it. Again, it's just styling, readability. Yeah? All right, so for Rochelle, what's missing, Rochelle, here? Can anyone spot semicolon, Rochelle? Yeah, at the end. Yes. For Chuck, I think it's. Yeah. Yeah.
Does it work because it's both the same numbers?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a bit controversial, Rochelle. Why? Because Rochelle, she called that variable numbers. Yeah? So she used the same variable here and there. It works because JavaScript understands that in reality, here you refer to that variable and not to that variable. That's why it works. But from a readability point of view, it's a bit confusing because numbers, I imagine a list of numbers, but that's not true. Yeah? Here you are comparing against one single number. Yeah? Semantics. So Chuck, yeah, all good. All good for Alex. As you may have noticed, some of you surround the argument with parentheses, like Alex did. You see? Others, like Chuck, didn't. You see? The code is literally the same. One likes parentheses, the other doesn't. Right? So parentheses.
Also got space as well.
Correct. Also, Alex has a random space here. Yeah? Apart from the random space, the parentheses are optional, generally speaking. If you have one single argument, like here, they are optional. But hey, that's not a bad thing. If you are unsure whether you need it or not, then just keep the parentheses on. Yeah? They don't hurt. Florin, all good. And Fish, fantastic, all good. And Octavian, skip it. Octavian, skip it. But does it make sense, Octavian?
Yes, now yes. It was this challenge was my first ever encounter with jumps.
Yeah, skip. And how was it? Was it like a sexy encounter? Or was it like...
It's good, yeah, I mean, the syntax is different than I learned Ruby before, so everything was.
Yeah, yeah.
But I already started understanding, like, it's very helpful what we're discussing here and like reading the code.
Good,
So
awesome. Thank you, Octavian. So question number 2. What we got on question number 2? Combine strings with variables. We already came across similar exercise today, right? So get welcome message, Peter, Marta, and Andrew. We have to combine hello. Hello is hard-coded, it's static, right? We always say hello to our customers. And then the name of the user. So, what's the first thing we should write? Return, before we forget. Also, something I can recommend you is do that. Return a semicolon, so then you won't forget. Yeah, because it's the same thing every time you create a function. So do it first, and that's it. Cool, so now, we want to say hello. So, can you do hello username? We need what? Quotes, all right, so like that. Around hello, like that. Plus, like that. So Alex, I think, or Chuck, who was that? Alex said we need a space here. What do you think? Do we need a space? Let's see what happens if we don't add the space. You see? Hello, Peter. Hello, Marta. We definitely need space. And then it works. Let's solve the problem. Let's find 2 alternatives to this solution. To me, that would be valid. However, can we replace the single quotes with double quotes? As we explained this morning, they are equivalent. And now, let's find out a very sexy way to solve the problem. Once again, that's valid, no problem at all. But if you go to a job interview and you have literally this problem and you do that, it will feel a bit weird. Like, wait a minute, that person learned coding 3 months ago. Why is he or she using that technique from the 90s? So now there is a slightly different way of dealing with the problem. Let me show you. So there is something on your keyboard. Many of you have probably have never used it, which is the backticks. Look, a backtick. If you're a Mac user, they are bottom left. If you're a Windows user, that character is top left. You need to find it. Yeah, spend some minutes dealing with it. So what's the beautifulness about backticks? Look, let me go back to what Kaney originally suggested. So Kaney said, hello, username. Yeah? Again, that's fine, it works. With the new technique, correct. With the new technique, this is what we call template literals. You can easily combine static text, like hello, how are you? Get out my way, whatever, with, look at the syntax, dollar, and then curly braces. Inside of the curly braces, then we can specify the variable.
So when I was doing this, I was watching the video on
Yep.
this channel, and I was trying to replicate that. I wasn't listening to it, I was just watching it. I couldn't tell, I just put the apostrophe, like the single quote. I couldn't tell it was a different character.
Oh,
So how, like, if you're reading text, it's not very obvious at all, but that's a different character.
well, that's controversial, Alex.
But I mean, like, that's what I was looking, I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, it's not obvious.
What do you want me to do? Yes. I didn't define this standard, right? It's the way it works. Backticks. It is true, and you have to be very careful, especially if you're a Mac user, that sometimes, if you're using tools like Notes on Mac, when you add a quote, like a normal quote, when you copy and paste it, Mac changed the quote with a Greek quote. You know what a Greek quote is? I think it's called Greek quote. Maybe I just made that up. It's not a Greek quote. Or like a Turkish quote. So there is another quote that is like I don't even know how to explain how that quotes look.
Characters.
A single quote. Let me see. Oh God. That's like this one. You see? Something like that. And then you paste it, and it looks like a normal quote, but if you zoom it, if you get 1 centimeter away from the screen, you realize it's that one. And that one is invalid in JavaScript. So if you copy that back from Notes to Visual Studio Code, it will blow up the entire internet. Yeah? So you need to be sometimes, careful with this, with quote handling. But anyway, yeah, these are the famous backticks. Yeah. So let's run it and see if it works. It does work. We got confetti. So what's the main point behind backticks? It simplifies the process of combining strings and variables. Dealing with pluses is sometimes a bit annoying. We, as humans, use the plus symbol to add numbers, 2 plus 3, but not to say hello plus Esteban. That's a bit weird, right? You don't say that. So that's why this is a bit more natural way of dealing with strings. Another classic job interview question. How do we do that? Single quotes, double quotes, or backticks, template literals, introduced in 2015, the most important year in JavaScript history. All right, so let me quickly check what you did. That was question number 2 or 3? 2 still? All right. So backticks for Kaini, but Kaini, semicolon, correct. All good for Andrea, all good for Anita, all good for Camila, all good for Rochelle, good for Chuck, and Alex, all good, but next time try to use the backticks. What happened here, Florin?
Try to combine both of the methods.
Yeah. So what Florin is returning is hello plus Peter. You see? That plus is not compatible. I mean, it will just display a plus. It will take it as it is. Yeah? And fish, did that make any sense?
No backticks on.
Oh, that's a horrible excuse.
That's true.
You don't have backticks on your keyboard.
No, there is a which
But okay, fine. But even in that case, you have single quotes, right?
That's what I said. I was going to use that.
Ah, okay. Cool. Do you search the virtual keyboard thingy?
I have downloaded it.
Cool, nice. All right. So Octavian, did it make any sense?
Oh, yes.
Cool. Awesome. I'm going to do the last question, which is a bit weird. It's a bit borderline, but I'll do it, and then we will call it a day workshop-wise. It's a very intense session, right? So, how to explain that? So, how many arguments do we receive here? So again, 1. What's the type of the argument? Array of what?
Array of strings.
Array of strings, yeah? We have 1 array of strings. How many strings? It depends. Here we got 2 strings, then we got 3, then we got none, yeah? It depends. And the thing is, according to this weird exercise, if you check on the training list, that topic is at the very bottom. It's like, this is not very important. But anyway, just by coincidence, you got it today. according to this exercise, we want to find the indexes of each element. In other words, even though we'll cover that tomorrow, if I want to check the first day of the year, which number is it? The first day of the year? You say, which day is today? Is the day 0? 1. Same with the month. The first month of the year is month number. If you're writing a date, 1 of 2000 whatever, yeah, 2020, 1. We as humans, generally speaking, we start counting at 1. JavaScript doesn't like that. So the first number in JavaScript is number 0. That's important. So if you want to get the first element of a list, it will be at index number 0. That's why you can see, what's the first index? 0. What's the second index? 1. Yeah. We'll cover that tomorrow in detail. But for now, we need to do something like that. So, once again, that problem is a bit overcomplicated to me, but let's solve it. Arguments, one argument. Can you tell me a good variable name? Name? Like that? Wrong, I don't like it. Name, in my mind, will be the name of one person. Say it again? Cannot hear that. Indexes? No, I don't like that neither, because we are referring arrays. Array. Technically speaking, array is right, because we receive an array. However, an array tells me nothing about the semantics of the exercise. Array of what? Could be porn actors, right? That's not what the exercise talks about. Correct. I'm with fish. We have an array of philosophers, like that. Not sure if I'm spelling that right or not. Let me go to Google. Well, you get the idea, right? Philosophers. I hope. Something like that. Cool. Singular or plural? Why?
Plural.
Why plural, Anita?
It's a collection.
Correct. Anita is right. We don't necessarily have a single philosopher. We have an array list. Let's keep it in plural. Again, that won't affect the result. But in terms of readability, philosophers. And now, once again, this is complicated. So I completely understand if you don't get that, right? That's fine. This is something, I'll tell you something. So generally speaking, students, they take 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks, to complete beginner level. That's, well, the thing is, this question is at the very bottom of beginner. So it's something on beginner, but closer to intermediate. So you shouldn't worry about that on the first day of the bootcamp. So that's fine, but hey, let's do it. So, first of all, my idea is, I want to create a variable, like a basket. I'm not going to call it basket, but for now. What type of data the basket is? It's an array, it's an empty array, right? Before I forget, I will return it. And now, the chicken, the meat of the exercise, the Kobe beef. So let's iterate over the array of philosophers. How do we do that? Thankfully, the exercise is inviting us to use the for-in looping structure. I'm not a big fan of that, but hey, let's do it. So the for-in works in the following way. For. Yeah. Now the name of the variable, let me call it for now Brexit. Sometimes I do that, because if I do something radically wrong, then I will remember that's wrong. If I call it I may forget to revisit that. But if I do something wrong, for sure I'll revisit it. So the syntax is for variable in philosophers, look at the syntax. So that's another different strategy to iterate, to go through all the philosophers. So now I want to, that will give me the index of each philosopher. What will be the first index? 0, and then 1, and then 2, right? So, does anybody know how to fill the basket of Tesco with groceries? How to add elements to the array? Push, that's correct. We'll do a workshop about that. So once again, don't worry. Push. And now I push Brexit. Yeah? We're filling the basket. So now let's rename it. Can you give me a decent name for the variable? Who said index? What do you think? Are we saving the index? I think so. I agree with you, Kenny. We're saving the index. We're saving the number 0, 1, 2. So to me, that's a good name. Yeah. Anything else? Change basket. All right. Fair enough. Let's change basket. To what, Alex?
Indexes.
Yeah. If you are wrong, at least be consistently wrong. Because at least you're proving you have a strategy, right? So if I call it Brexit, let me go back. To me, that variable should be Brexits, plural. I'm wrong, but I'm consistently wrong. So if we decided to call the variable index, I didn't disagree on that, then the side effect is the array should be called indexes. Any question? That's fine. I'm not asking you to understand that particular question. This is one of the most complicated questions on the beginner level. Let's recap anyways. So we have an array. We have a list of philosophers. Could be a list of philosophers, numbers, whatever. Countries, it doesn't really matter. The content doesn't really matter. So we have an array of philosophers and we want to return an array of indexes. So if we got 2 elements, then we are going to return an array of 2 numbers with the indexes. So what's the index of the first element of an array? 0. Correct. What's the index of the second element of an array? Correct. That's why we return 0 and 1. Likewise, if we got 3 elements, we will return an array of 0, 1, and 2. And if we got no elements, we just return an empty array because there is nothing. Yeah? So that's the idea. And how do we implement the idea? So the key of the exercise is here. That's the most important line. So thanks to the for in loop in JavaScript, we can get all the individual indexes of our list of philosophers. In other words, can anybody tell me if my list of philosophers is, I don't know, ignore philosophers, A, B, and C, if that's my list, how many times this line will run? 3? Anybody disagree on that? Andrea? No, it's not 3 or no disagree? No, it's 3, all right. And if we got, for instance, Rochelle, I've got a question for you. If I got an empty array, so can you tell me, Rochelle, how many times? Oh, hello, I'm clicking somewhere. Oh, what did it? Oh, my code is collapsed. Here we go. Right, so if I got an empty array, can you tell me how many times this line will run? Once. It will run as many times as elements our list has. How many elements our list has? Correct. Yeah? And if I had 1 million elements, how many times this line will run?
1 million
Minus 1?
1 million times. 1 million times.
Should we try it? No. 1 million, right? So it will go through from the beginning to the end of the list. Yeah. Again, I'm not a big fan. I mean, to me, the reason why I'm not a big fan is why do you need to do that? Yeah. Sometimes hard to find the value. Okay, yeah, you know how to solve it, but in which scenario in your life this is going to solve you from having a problem? Anyway, it's what it is. Yeah.
What is the purpose of let indexes equals?
That's correct. So with let, we are creating, as we will see tomorrow, a private variable. Yeah, a private variable. That private variable only exists inside of that function, local scope, and equal. Sorry about that. Equal square bracket. That means we're initializing the variable to an empty array. We're getting the basket from Tesco, empty, and then we'll fill it here.
So if we modify the original array and add more to it, then should we do the basket fill in or not?
So you want to add something here?
No, the original array. So they have three, like you said, A, B, C,
Hmm?
and this runs.
Hmm?
Then we add D, E, F.
Hmm?
What happens?
No, the content doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you've got a list of philosophers, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. For each element on the array, it will save the index associated to that element. First element, index 0. Second element, index 1, and so on. Yeah?
So you can actually make the next screen.
Yep.
You can actually make indexes philosophers instead.
That's a good question. So Fish is suggesting to rename indexes something like that.
Yeah.
What do you think, guys? Will this work or not? That's a good question in a job interview, actually. Depending on your answer and how well you defend it, you'll get the job or not. So no pressure. You are fighting for 1,500 a day and 35 days holidays a year and free whiskey. So you think that it will fail because philosophers will be already defined. That's a good answer. You get the job. Congratulations. He's right. Look, we already have a variable called philosophers. If you do that, you are shadowing, you are overwriting the original variable. In other words, that will fail. Oh, sorry. Here, that will fail because you won't have access anymore to the list of philosophers. That's why we should avoid creating a variable with the same name as another variable. Let's be a bit more creative. Yeah, so let's call it indexes.
So when you declare the variable as philosophers,
Yep.
you said it would be working.
It will probably throw an error.
Okay.
Variable philosophers already exist.
Okay.
Any
Before off, what would we get? Names?
fantastic question. That's a fantastic question, Camila. If we use for off,
Get the values.
the values. What do you mean the values?
Plateaus.
Let's have a look. You're right. You're right. If we use for off, rather than getting the indexes, we get the values. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
If we need it, fine. If we do that, if you wanted to do that, do you think index will remain a valid variable name?
No.
How would you call it?
Philosopher.
Do you agree with Anita? So Anita is suggesting to do that. If we wanted to get the name of the philosophers. Do you agree on that? Or you prefer to call it index?
It's not going to be an index anymore.
No, I know. It's not going to be the index anymore. So from a semantics point of view, what's your favorite variable name here? Say again? Philosopher, yeah? I agree with you. I think that will be a good variable name. Would you change anything else if we wanted to get the name of the philosophers?
The indexes.
Correct. Indexes now feels a bit weird. So how do we call it now?
Names of philosophers.
Names of philosophers?
It's long, but
Yeah. You can call it names of philosophers or philosophers names or philosopher list. I don't know. Don't call it indexes. Anything else? No? All right. So, yeah, I think, yeah.
So, I'm still stuck with the whole thing when you declare this philosophers over here. Is this the argument also considered as a local variable?
Yeah, that philosopher's variable is a local variable that is bound, is linked to the data that we receive. That's local. Only works inside of this function. And of course, we can rename it to people. Yeah, it will work. But once again, it will feel a bit weird, right?
Okay.
Anything else? No? All right. So let me just to wrap up this session. Let me just check what you offered here. That was question number 3, I believe. Here we go. So question number 3. No. Philosophers. Where is it? Here we go. All right. So, Tiny.
Yeah, I wonder, I didn't declare array, but it worked.
Yeah, once again, it works because technically speaking, the logic is perfect. But from a readability point of view, array tells me nothing about the content of your data.
The second line,
So that's one thing. And likewise, you get a similar problem here, another array. To me, I'm struggling to understand the logic behind your code because array or index feels very computer oriented. Yeah, we should be a bit more human oriented.
yeah, I didn't declare that.
That's another problem. That's another problem. And that's the beautifulness about the upper beginner level. Everyone has freedom. And this is where you see where people really struggle sometimes. So, Tiny didn't declare the variable using let. That's technically speaking correct. But I couldn't do that because this is creating a sort of a global variable available everywhere in your code. Yeah? We should keep the scope of our variables local, and you do that by just adding the let prefix. Yeah? Anything else about Kiny solution?
So in JavaScript as well, like in Ruby, you can shorten, the variable's name to
Yep.
first name.
Correct. Any elegance issue?
space.
Correct, here, right? Before, you see? So the problem with Kiny is she's wrong, but she's not consistently wrong. Because she uses, look, there's a space here. Why? How do you defend that? If there is a space between parentheses and curly brace, why 2 lines after that's not respected, right? We need to do it consistently. So yeah, let's have a space between these 2 elements. Anything else? Nothing? Semicolon, where, Anita? Correct, Tiny. You see? There's a missing semicolon here. Yeah, tiny thing. But to me, if I had to complain, rather than complaining about spaces, semicolons, I will complain about the readability of your algorithm. Yep.
Yeah, I did read about it for the.
So,
I didn't see it.
so Andrea did something interesting here. He solved the problem, yes. In a very elegant way, yes. In one line, yes. But he ignored the instructions. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why. And that something happens as well. So you get a test from a company, and they ask you to solve a problem in a specific way. Do this, and then do that, and then do that. And maybe you solve it in a completely different way. Maybe it's better.
I don't get it.
You don't get the job. You don't get the job because you prove to be a really good developer, but the message is you have been unable to follow a series of instructions. Yeah? So yeah. So for my concern about Anita is the same as for Kaini. Yeah, readability. Arrays, X tells me nothing. Yeah, but all good apart from that. And same for Camila. No, for Camila it's even worse. Because look, if you call it array, that's an array. Fine, tells me nothing, but it's an array. You are right. However, you call it indexes. You don't have a list of indexes. To me, a list of indexes is numbers. Yeah, 0, 1, 2, 3. That's not what you get. What you get is a list of names of philosophers. Yeah. So let's try to avoid this sort of confusion on the semantics. Let's call it philosophers, or names, or people, I don't know. For Rochelle, yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, right? Rochelle, so variable names. I mean, this is something that obviously we'll keep training, so don't worry. Everyone finish the bootcamp writing beautiful naming conventions, so don't worry about that.
So just a question about
Yeah, Camila?
the bar inside.
It's a good point, Andrea. It's a good point. I didn't want to mention that, but because you referred to it. So we've been talking about using let. Camila, however, used bar. You're like, what the hell? It took me 2 hours to understand let. Now there's a new one, bar. Yes, bar is the 90s way of declaring variables in JavaScript. Still valid, but if you have to write some code for a company, don't use bar. Never use bar. Use, where I click, use let. And it goes beyond the scope of the session to explain the differences. There are some minor, tiny differences, but no one really writes bar today. So Rochelle, yeah, all good, apart from naming conventions and semicolons and spacing here, Rochelle, yeah, cool. For Chuck, again, spacing here, you see, so Chuck is right, we receive an array, but semantics can be improved a bit. Same for Alex, at least his semicolons strategy is good. Can you spot any elegance warning for Alex? Space after what? Fish?
Between the parentheses.
Aha, here. Yeah, that's right. Anything else?
So the indentation.
Ah, yes. Indentation is wrong. You are lucky you are not a Python developer, because in Python that will fail. Look, whenever you use curly braces, that means you are encapsulating a bunch of lines of code. Yeah? Look, you see? Curly brace. And then look at what we do. We indent everything to the right, because everything belongs to that block, to that context, to that scope. Likewise, in this for loop, we also open curly brace. That implies that line should be indented to the right. As you can see, for instance, Chuck did. You see? And then everybody else skip it. So Florin, Fish, Octavian, any questions? Second? Florin, Octavian, any question? Second?
Same, I was left
Yeah, Andrea?
Doesn't work.
Which one? This one?
Yeah, it's me. That's what
That's very weird. That's very weird. Very, very weird. It's good, right? I'll tell you something. One of the reasons why I like to have sneaky guests running challenges is because eventually, because we are learning together, probably, even though everybody will have different style and blah, 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 we'll tend to write similar code style, yeah? Because we are learning together. However, when we have a guest like Madeline, who maybe learned coding in Romania, or maybe here, or who knows, he's doing something radically different, yeah?
This is the way I iterate as well.
The way you iterate
Yeah, in Ruby.
in Ruby. No,
I
but
equals I equals to 0.
yeah, but that's absolutely pointless. That solution is wrong because of many reasons. I mean, it works, but this is much worse than anything you've done today. Why? Can anybody tell me? First of all, EL. Naming conventions is horrible, but in your case it was horrible most of the time, so I'm not going to complain about that. But missing space, wrong. Anyway, the important bit here is, he's creating a variable, EL. I have no idea what.
Because it's not in the function side, in the loop.
Yeah. So EL is a variable he's not declaring. So for instance, if I check Alex or anybody else, the variable is local. Yeah? But whenever you declare a variable, use let. He's not declaring it.
So will it be var by default?
That's bad. It works, but that's a bad technique. It's a bad pattern.
No,
And-
no, if it's not declared, will it assume as var?
Var or let.
VAR.
VAR or ideally let. LET. The main issue, because it's unnecessary, is why you declare a new variable called I. Yeah. Why you do that?
That's how you iterate. That's how you iterate in a string in Ruby. I equals 0, I equals 12.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm not against that. I get the point. I don't want to say the solution is wrong. It's just different. But to me, it's unnecessarily complicated because the information that he's storing on the I variable is already here. EL already has the index 0, 1, 2, 3. So if you declare a variable EL with the information that you need, what's the point of adding a new variable I to do the same thing? And it's even worse. It's even worse because, as you may have noticed, what we are saving is the index as a string. 0, 1, 2, 3. In this particular case, he's saving a number, and because he's saving a number, he has to transform it into a string. So it feels a bit over-engineered, over-complicated. Yeah? But anyway, I think to me it's a really healthy exercise to compare your code against other developers, definitely. It will happen on the other way around. I mean, if you join us on the 29th of January with Vodafone, you'll do a challenge, you may score 90, and you will compete against a senior developer that will score 90, but his code will look much better than yours. It's a good opportunity to catch up and to learn from the experts. Yeah? Anything else, guys? No? All right, so